I can't believe it. I have just been hired in this multinational company in India, and I don't know what to do to be a good leader. People here work so differently from they work in Peru. I don't know what to do. Oh, right. I got Michela and Fabiana. Those two really know how to do overcome cultural difference in leadership. Maybe they can give me some advices.
Hi, Marko.
Hey,
Hi.
Marco.
Hi, girls. I need your help. I was hired in this company in India, but I don't know what to do to be a good leader. I feel like nobody understands me here.
Don't worry, we can help you.
So, first, I think you need to understand the cultural differences between India and Peru because there are a lot of cultural differences, and you actually need to understand them to be a good leader. So, for this, there is Globe Project that help us understand the aspects of leadership.
That's so interesting. I know them. What kind of manager I will be if I didn't. But I don't know how they work in India.
Yeah, so I'm going to show you the dimensions summarized so you can remember them and really understand how they work in South Asia, but also in India.
Okay. But how do I use this?
So all these dimensions they work very differently between Latin America and Southern Asia. In Southern Asia, these dimensions help the most to be an outstanding leadership that is what you need, are charismatic, value-based, and also team-oriented leadership. According to Globe Project 2023, this means that Southern Asia desire leaders who are visionary, but they're also inspirational, and they possess high levels of integrity and are willing to make personal sacrifices.
Okay, I get it. But how is that in India?
So I have here the results from the Globe project. I don't know if you can see them.
Yeah, I see it.
Yes, we can.
As we can see here, India follows this South Asia pattern. So they have a high score in charismatic, which means they have a great ability to inspire and motivate the others in the team. They have also a high score in team oriented, and this means that the ability to build teams effectively contributes to being a good leader in India. And for people in India, the fact that the manager involves others in the decision making progress contributes only slightly to being a good leader, and therefore the participative dimension is not high, and it's even lower than the average score. In contrast, the human-oriented dimension is even higher than the average, as we can see here. And this means that people in India consider that supportive, considerate, and compassionate and generous leaders are the ones that succeed in the leadership. They also believe, on average, that the autonomous range of leader has no impact on the performance. And finally, for them, the self-protective dimension has no impact on performance of the leaders either.
Also, I know that for the first one, that is charismatic, value-based leadership, is a lot like in Peru. I read in Leadership in Organization Development Journal of the University Carlos III of Madrid, and it says that if the subordinates in Peru business perceive that their supervisors represent values, they can perform better, which means that Peru is just like India in that aspect. I get everything. So, what do you think? I'm ready to go.
No,
No, there's
there's
a
a
lot
lot
more.
more,
Like what?
like ethics.
Hmm. The business ethics practices. Ethics are like the tools in the business making and are universal. There is no such thing as your ethics and mine ethics. It's universal and the same among cultures, right?
Yeah, you got it perfectly. And actually, what happens is that Peru has a lot of corruption, especially related with public institutions. So that makes us to have a bad background. Empathizing that Peru has one of the high rates of corruption in the region. This is because in the Transparency Index, we only have 36 out of 100, and according to Padilla, and that he wrote an article in 2020. Also, bribes are common, and the organizations contribute to this. Stanfield, Debris, and Solas in 2017 explained that in Latin America, it is acceptable to have an anti-ethical tactics to avoid difficulties in businesses and to have faster processes. And this has just gone worse because there has been an increase from 44% to 62% on how citizens think that corruption has affected them. But it also happens because these citizens and they're hypocrites because they think that others shouldn't be corrupt, like big businesses, but they are corrupt by not paying taxes or bribing police officers, and this is only causing more ethical problems.
I remember I read that according to Smith published in 2014 that 86% of Peruvian professionals believe that they overlook ethical principles because the priority is the business. This means that Peru is a hostile environment for doing business because of the lack of technical practices caused by the lack of education and hypocrisy of the population. This hypocrisy is also related to the fact that Peruvians' ethics depends on the situation.
Sadly, this makes ethics way more blurry, and there is no transparency, no empathy, and it is believed that the welfare of business is way more important. So, putting this above everything and also everyone else, it means that the state and the environment do not allow companies to be ethical, and people are doing nothing to change it. They simply put ethics aside to have successful businesses.
But India, on the other hand, as Ashok explains, even there is a common perception that business cannot be run ethically, but actually they can because the multinational companies that go into India need the companies to be ethical. So now India, even having a transparency index that is like the same of Peru, and that shows that the government is corrupt, have businesses that are not corrupt because they're not accepting bribes anymore because they know that if they're not ethical, then other companies from outside are not going to do business with them. And so that what they do to be more ethical is only like adhering to the rules and regulations correctly. So in that way, they can have like multinational treatments. But the problem is that the motivation is not intrinsic, but comes from the outside, from the pressure from multinational that do not support companies if they're not ethical. But I mean, at least they're trying.
So, like in conclusion, comparing India with Peru, we have similar background, a corrupt government which hinders ethical business practices. It's just that each country handles it differently. Peruvian fall into the corruption and hypocritize while evading taxes, complaining about corruption president. But India, on the other hand, are trying to change by doing things as low ones under the pressure of globalization, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
And what about the stakeholders?
I know actually a friend that is really an expert in this subject. Her name is Isabel and she's from Germany.
How we're going to talk to her? I don't
Well,
know.
maybe I had the feeling that you were going to need help with your adaptation because we all actually need it. So I asked her to record a video for you explaining all about that. And in that way, the adaptation curve is going to be easier for you because you're going to have all the information you need in the way that the crisis stage for your psychological adaptation can also be shorter.
Fabi, that's so nice of you. Thanks. I feel having a crisis, but now I'm calmer. Also, technology helps us to be connected and perform better, even in different time zones, different countries, and different language. That's amazing. I need to learn more about Zoom and videos to be a better leader too. In that way, I have better like communication.
Yes, you're right. And I'm presenting the video if you don't mind.
Yes, of course. Again, thank you. You can.
Hey Marco, I'm Isabel and I worked several years in India, so I hope I can help you. And I will start with the internal stakeholders. So if we take a look on the investors as a leader, you need to cater to diverse investor groups, both foreign and domestic, and you should provide a transparent communication. Regarding to the board members, we have to prioritize corporate governance and value strong relationships, and we should adapt to hierarchical structures. The most important part for us as leaders are the employees in the company. So India has is a diverse nation and with different cultural backgrounds. So, as an effective leader in India, you should be sensitive to this diversity and promote inclusive communication. As mentioned, for example, in the Harvard Business Report from 2010, leadership practices that prioritize employee engagement, open communication, and career development are more likely to succeed. For the external stakeholder relationships, you have to consider, for example, the labor unions, that leaders must engage in constructive dialogue with labor unions to address workers' rights. Further, for the government as a very important external stakeholder, complex regulations and policies have to be navigated from you as a leader towards to the media and public relations. Leaders in India often engage with the media to manage their public image and respond to public sentiment. And moreover, Indian society places a strong emphasis on CSR activities. And also, as mentioned in the Harvard Business Report, due to the poor overall society and inadequate acting of the government, companies are trying to overtake responsibility. And I can tell you that 40% of the Indian companies monitor progress in achieving the CSR targets. So this were a lot of information, but I hope I could help you with all of this.
Oh my God, I understand everything right. You know what could be nice? Get to know a real person that is successful leader in India, so I can try to investigate them and get information and know their practices.
Yes, I know someone. Her name is Mabel. She worked in India and knows a lot of Indian role models. She investigated them because, as you said, it was a good strategy for being a better leader and understanding their culture.
Hi guys, and a special hi Marko. Right now I'm in my free time, but I'll be happy to talk to you a little about my experience. If you're looking to become a successful leader in India, you have to keep in mind that you will have to be inspired by good approaches, values, and achievements. Becoming a successful manager in India, like anywhere else, involves the combination of leadership skills, industry knowledge, and adaptability to an ever-evolving business environment. An example of this is Ratan Tata. He's a prominent business leader in India. He's focused on corporate social responsibility, and his ability to guide and diversify conglomerate are admirable qualities. Number two, Mahbani. He's one of the most influential businessmen in India. His leadership in business expansion and technology is an example for general managers. Number three, Ravi Venkatesan. He has held executive positions in several major companies, including Microsoft India and Bank of Baroda. He's an example of versatile and successful leadership. Number four, Rajat Sharma, as the managing director of India TV. Rajat Sharma is a prominent leader in the media sector and an exemplar of leadership in media and journalism. These are some Indian business leaders who have achieved success in various sectors. Marko, based on my experience, I can tell you that successful leadership involves adaptability, informed decision making, and the ability to inspire and guide teams effectively.
That's so interesting, Mabel. I love the information. I will investigate deeply on all of them to get and understand all their practices. But are all of them men? What's the role of the gender in leadership in India?
I can explain that because the role of women in the workplace is another aspect that you need to consider.
Now, that's a very important concept. Did you know that in comparison with men, women don't get higher positions while working?
And why is that?
Several factors, but it all summarizes in gender discrimination.
But how does that affect work environment, and how can I, as a manager, avoid that?
Actually, it affects the work environment because it perpetuates stereotypes. Stereotypes, for example, influence a lot whenever we talk about someone assuming a bigger role. Women throughout history are being portrayed as sensible and maternal, which are not the qualities that businesses are looking for in their leaders. That's why they feel the pressure to act more challenging and to be more competent and determined. But for women, stereotypes like this make their way to the leadership position way more difficult. The backlash that stereotypes create stops a woman's opportunity to ascend. Between the working area, male employees are more likely to be assigned work and their fellow women co-workers. And in this way, probabilities that the male employees will become future bosses goes up because they have an opportunity to show their skills.
I didn't realize how this perpetuation of gender roles in a working area can be very damaging for the professional growth of a lot of women.
Yeah, but it's not the only reason. One of the main reasons is that during the professional path of women, there comes a certain point where they have to leave work because they need to raise children and be with their family, so they can continue their career, and therefore they cannot achieve higher positions.
The role women play in many families affects a lot, mainly because it's still viewed that women should dedicate their time to their family. Otherwise, they can be perceived as selfish.
Exactly. Also, according to a study from Kyoto University, talks about the famous Queen Bee syndrome. This syndrome is about women that are already in leadership positions. They feel the pressure to maintain their leadership positions or to keep growing, which is a good thing until it becomes to make differences between women in higher positions and women in lower positions. So, in this way, women in higher positions tend to develop more masculine traits and usually don't have family of their own.
Yeah, actually, this is a social identity theory. There is a social identity theory where, once again, gender bias and the perpetuation of stereotypes affect also the relationship between women.
I think that as a manager, it's important to consider all this because it's not fair that this stereotypes a woman on the work environment. So, like in conclusion, according to the Globe Project, in order to be considered a good manager, I need to be visionary, inspirational, collaborative, modest, and tolerant. Because the most important dimensions are charismatic, team-oriented, and human-oriented. And in order to be successful in the international field, I need to stop thinking as they do in the Peru, and be ethical, even if the government sometimes seems to be pushing me to not to. Also, I need to take into consideration what Isabel explained and investigate more about the impact of international actor communication practices and relationship building process on the leadership practices because they depend on their own context of the country. Also, I need to look up to Ratatatan, taking into consideration that they were successful. And also, as a man, I need to understand women and treat them as equal as I always do. So they can keep growing and also be considered because they can have family too. And with all this information, now it seems that I can be a super manager in India. Thank you all for all the information and the tips to be a better leadership.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome.